Hello everybody. This is just a quick video to show you some of the changes that we've made to how clients and other parties are handled in RealDesk. If you've used RealDesk a fair bit in the past, you've probably seen that there have been certain limitations to the way that we define clients and other parties in the deal. So for instance, there's a limitation where you can't really have more than two people on a deal, like a client and a partner. Also limitations where if you have basically the other side of a deal. So if you're on the listing side and you're, putting in the buyer, for instance, you can't send EFTs to that buyer because you're just basically typing in the buyer's name just as a free typed bit of text. And so there's no way to like attach a bank account or an address or anything like that to that. So this is something we've actually been working on for quite a while in terms of, overcoming those limitations. And I'm excited to say that we're just on the cusp of basically releasing this. And I'm just giving you a preview here of the changes so that you understand like what will happen and how some of these screens will change once we release this. So the first place where you may notice this is in adding new clients. So in the past, when you added a new client, there would be basically a space to add a client and then a client partner. And those two individuals were basically always together. They were effectively like one client. There was no way to sort of break them apart and no way to add other clients as well. So that model's totally changed. And what you'll see here instead is that you can add an initial client and then you can add additional clients as well. And when you do that, those 2, 3, 5, 10, you can keep on going and keep adding as many as you want. They will be totally separate client records in the database, so you can add them to deals together separately and so on. But what they will have here when you add them together at the same time is they'll have basically a link. So if you add, two people who are spouses, so, John Smith and Mary Smith together, then when you add them to a deal or when you select John Smith or Mary Smith, they will sort of show up on the deal together, but you can change that. Again, you can remove one, remove the other, add other people, and so on. So you have complete freedom basically in terms of which clients that you add and also how many. You can now have as many clients on a deal as you want. So I'll show you a little bit about how this works. So I've entered in my first client, John Smith. Then I pressed the add additional client button and I added Mary Smith. And if these two people share the same address, I can click this here. And as you can see, it will auto-populate the address. And again, I can continue to do this as long as I want, but let's just add these two clients as an example. And because I'm in here right now as a super admin, I will go ahead and assign them to my agent. So I've assigned them to my agent and I will click save, and that will basically just save the client, and I'll see John Smith as well. But if I want to look up my other client that I just added, Mary Smith, I can look her up as well and click on her. And as you can see, she has a separate record. If she goes onto a deal together with John, they'll both show up. Or if I look up either client, I will see the deals as well. And I'll show you how to do that here in a moment. Okay, so now I'm in the transaction room. I'm going to submit a deal as Mark, the agent, where I've just added these two clients, John Smith and Mary Smith. So if I click on start a new buying deal, you'll see that when the list of clients comes up, I actually have both John Smith and Mary Smith available. So again, that's different than it would have been in the past, where I would have added John Smith and Mary Smith essentially together as the same client, and I would have only seen John's name or whoever I added first. So here I can add them each independently. When I click on John and then click submit, what you'll see here is that because I added those two people together and they're linked together in the database essentially, that they do show up together. But I can change that. Like I can remove Mary, I can add other people, and so on. So let me just show you a little bit about how this will work. So I went ahead and populated some of the basic deal information. Now, if I want to add another client or somebody else to the buying side, I can do that by just simply going in here and typing search. In this case, this agent doesn't have any other clients, so I'm not going to find anything if I type into this field. But what I can also do is just create a new client on the fly by clicking create buyer. And that will give me the ability to go in here and create whatever information that I need. So let's say, Donald Smith is also on this file. So I'll just add in, say, Donald Smith here, right? And just enter his information in the same as I would any other client. This will create him as a client of this agent. So I'll click on create here, and that will add him as a client and also add him to the deal. So as you can see, I have now 3 different buyers on the deal. Now for the selling side, this is typically where you would have just like typed in a name, right? And then there would be no essentially record in the database just beyond that name that you typed. And that was why we couldn't, for instance, then create an EFT transaction to that person or add an address or anything like that, because it was literally just, a couple of words of text. So here in this case, instead, we have the opportunity to basically create each of our sellers. And again, you can add as many different sellers as you want as what we call an other party. So like a sort of third party thing. So if I click here on create seller, so let's say our first seller is Martha Jones, right? And I don't need to add additional information for this seller. I can if I want, but if I don't have the address or phone number, I don't need to add that. I can just add the name and click create. And then I can continue to do that for any additional sellers that I need to create. So if there's a spouse, for instance, so I've created a second seller, Jonathan Jones. I could add additional ones. I can add as many as I want. But really the important thing is that as I do this now, there is basically a record or a profile being created for each of these people in the database. They're not created as clients because they are not clients of your brokerage, right? They're other parties, but their names and other information are stored in the database. And then that also means that we can associate a bank account or other information with them if we need to. So the rest of the deal information just gets entered in exactly the same way as you normally would. And then you can click submit and the deal gets submitted, and nothing else changes there. The deal has been added. So this deal gets just submitted as it normally would be. But the nice thing about this now is that, as you can remember, I have 3 different buyer clients on this deal, and I can search each of them independently, and they've got their own profile. So remember, we added Donald Smith as an example, right? So I can click on Donald Smith as a client, and he shows up on this deal. He shows up with his own address and his own email, and so on. But if I go to John Smith, for instance, which is one of the other clients, I can go to his client record. He's also got this deal linked, but then again, he's got a separate record. So for each of these, obviously I can enter in like bank account information and so on. But then here's the other fun part. So on the other side of the deal, again, we had 2 different sellers, Martha Jones and Jonathan Jones. So if I look up Martha Jones, she will show up as an other party. Again, not a client, but another sort of entity essentially. Which also means like if she shows up on other deals and so on, we can add her to other deals, and then we can see all of the different deals that she's been a part of. But maybe more importantly is that I can go into her record. Now we're going to change the text size here. This font size is a little bit small, so we'll clean that up before we release it. But you can see basically sort of her details. And then if I want to, what I can do as well is I can click on here, and then I can add additional information for her, like an address, like an email. And so if I do add an email for her, so I'll also be able to add bank account information for her. And this is particularly important in provinces where the person, for instance, providing the deposit is often not going to be your client. So if you're on the listing side, you'll be taking the deposit, but you'll be taking that from the buyer, who is this other party. So if you need to do a deposit refund, like historically we haven't been able to accommodate that, now we can, because you'll be able to put in the buyer's information and be able to then add a bank account and then do a deposit refund via EFT. So that's pretty much the functional changes. A few other things that you'll notice from basically a data perspective. One is that when you've had clients in the past that were added together, with that sort of client and partner, but adding them together, you'll notice that now they've basically been split apart, right? So now you'll have the opportunity, if John Smith and Mary Smith have been entered, together as one client record in the past, you'll have the opportunity to add them separately and bring them separately into deals and so on. So this change is sort of basically retroactive. And then as well, for other parties, for all of the different, buyers if you're on the selling side, sellers if you're on the buying side, that you've added in the past as well. You'll be able to see them in clients, in the clients tab underneath under this other parties tab, right? So basically every other party that you've got is going to be shown on here. And so you'll be able to do that with these other parties as well. So basically this change will work going forward, and even for the clients that and other parties and so on that you've added in the past. It's not something that will just start to work with new clients that you add from now on. It should be kind of retroactive. That's basically the changes. Nothing else really will change. But yeah, having the ability to add, as many clients as you want, and then having the ability to add, bank accounts and so on for everybody, hopefully we think are a couple of really useful big changes. And then this is going to also drive other similar kinds of changes in the future. So for instance, being able to add bank account information for third parties that you might be paying out withholdings to, like commission advances, CRA withholdings, things like that. Part of the work involved in doing this change that I'm just talking about here is also going to pave the way for that and a whole bunch of other really useful, exciting features as well. But this is basically the important sort of user-facing stuff that you need to know for when this change comes out, which we expect to happen over the weekend of November 15th. If you have any questions at all, or if you experience any issues with using this, or have any questions about how it works and so on, please don't hesitate to contact us. And thanks as always for being part of the RealDesk community.